Hi, everybody. I hope you are fine. Um, I have titled today's The Golden Rules. Yeah. And if you have watched my previous video about the English tenses, you can remember that I told you that there are some specific rules in English, very few of them, by which you can get anything. You can achieve, you can make any structure in English. And now, today we're going to touch it a little bit. Um, there are some rules, and I call them golden. Why golden? Gold is precious, and you cannot find too much of it. So it's the same. You have just a few very limited rules, and actually, in this case, there are three. I'm going to give you three rules. Rule number two and three are, in a way, embedded in rule number one, very dependent on rule number one, and then you're able to do anything. I say you are able to make the changes. Now, what does changing mean? It means, for instance, you have an affirmative sentence, a positive sentence, you want to make it negative, or you want to make a question. You have an affirmative, you want to make a question, a negative question, or you want to change the tense of a verb, or different forms of voice. Voice means if your sentence is passive or active voice. On this topic later on. So without any further ado, let me tell you what these rules are. Rule number one, all changes in English sentence structure involve auxiliary verbs. Rule number two, an auxiliary verb is either explicitly present in the sentence or must be supplied according to the tense and subject. And the last, rule number three, each grammatical change is applied only once per sentence. All right. That might seem a little long, but very simple. Okay, so you want to make any change in English sentences, you need an auxiliary. All changes are made with auxiliaries, and then you can either see the auxiliary in the structure of your sentence, visibly by your eyes, you can see the auxiliary, or no, you need to bring the auxiliary based on the tense and the subject of the sentence. And the last one is, you want to do any change, just use one. Just make the change one time in the level of a sentence. Okay, everything with auxiliaries. Auxiliaries are there, or you can just bring it based on the tense and the subject and do it once. That's it. Now, what are auxiliaries? There are just a few verbs. We call them helping verbs or auxiliaries. I'm sure you're familiar with them. So these are the auxiliary verbs. They're also called helping. They help you to apply, to make changes in the structure of the sentence. Now, what do we mean by changes? Okay, means you have, for instance, an affirmative sentence, you want to make it negative, or you have positive, negative. You have a sentence you want to make a question, negative question. You want to change the tense of the sentence. Okay, everything, every transformation, every change will be done by auxiliaries, helping verbs. The primary auxiliaries, the three of them, be, and then be has different formats. Am is are, was, were, been, and then you have, has, had, and do, which is do, does, and did. These are the most important. And then, of course, you also have some auxiliaries. A branch of auxiliaries are called modal verbs. Modal or modal. It goes with different pronunciation, okay? Modal. Um, it's a type of auxiliary, and the difference is that they also carry some meaning with them. For instance, they can mean necessity or ability or permission or probability or obligation, okay? What are they? Uh, can, could, may, might, must, shall, should, will, would. And then you have two or three which are called semi-modal auxiliary verbs. They are not that frequent, but they do exist, okay? Ought to, need, and there. So you see, even the number of auxiliary verbs and modal, which is a type of auxiliary, there are about 20 something. They're all, and nothing more. Okay, so very few of them. What we mean by change means you either want to make a negative sentence, make a question format, etc., etc. If you have seen my previous lesson about tenses, you know that we have 12 tenses in English, and if you conjugate a verb in these 12 tenses, you can see conjugate means to have different tense, to show the format of the verb in different, as a formula in a way you would say, the formula of the verb in different and certain tense. If you look at them like this, you can see that in the whole 12 tenses, the only time that you cannot see the auxiliary in the format of the verb, in the formula of the verb, is either simple present or simple past tense. It's very interesting. Even sometimes you can have auxiliaries. For instance, you say, I'm a teacher. This is a simple present tense. I was late the other time. This is past, simple past. So you're using a to be, and to be here is an auxiliary. As you can see, I've shown them in red. Now, very quickly, let's see what we can do with auxiliaries in changes. But before that, let me explain that. In a way, you see, out of the 12 tenses, you could see that the only tense in which you might not see the auxiliary is simple past and simple present tense. Now, here is an interesting point. You might want to be a little tricky and say, okay, why not? When it is simple present tense and you want to make um, any change and you need do or does, who knows? Maybe in the verb itself you have it. It's somewhere hidden in the verb. So, for instance, I say, I speak English. Jack speaks English. Remember, we need to add S or ES when your subject is third person singular. A singular noun or he, she, it. Okay, you add S or ES. And then when you want to make the change, you bring do or does as the necessary auxiliary. Who knows, maybe this do or does exist in the format of S or ES in the very verb. Just think about it. In a way, you're making a trick, but this trick works. Why does it work? When you make it negative, you say, Jack speaks English fluently. This is affirmative. You want to make it negative, you said, Jack does not speak English fluently. Do you say, you do not say, Jack does not speaks. No, this is wrong. Okay, so remember, only one time. You apply using the auxiliary only one time. And maybe this auxiliary exists there. So Jack does not speak English fluently. Or when you want to make it a question format, does Jack do you say, does Jack speak or speaks? No, you have one S here. This S might be deep down in the verb, might be the does or do that we use. Okay, so when you're using that, one time is enough. So don't you have to don't use it. Don't add any S or ES. Okay, so does Jack speak English? This one-time application can have another format as well. Okay, you know that in some tenses you have and you can see more than one auxiliary. So you want to use the auxiliary, just use the first. You want to make negative, just add not, not after the negative, after the first auxiliary. You want to make it question in yes, no question format, just bring the first one before the subject. So you would say, for instance, we will have finished this project by Tuesday next week. It's a future perfect tense, okay? So will you have finished? Okay, so just use the first auxiliary is, you don't say will have you finished. No, it's not necessary. Just one time. Use one of them is enough. One time. All right. So, but very quickly, every change is made with auxiliaries. Either you can see the auxiliary in the format of the structure, or you will bring the suitable auxiliary based on the tense and the subject of the structure. And then one time, just use it one time on the level of a sentence. Just use it one time. Now, let me give you maybe two examples with Khomeini and After as usual, as I promised before. For instance, you can say Khomeini loves this After, then you want to make it negative, okay? So Khomeini doesn't love this After. He loves another one. And then suppose that you want to make question. Khomeini bought this After yesterday. It's past tense, okay? So for the past, we use did. Did Khomeini buy? We don't say did Khomeini bought. Remember, just one time. Use, apply the auxiliary one time and the level of the sentence. Did Khomeini buy this After yesterday? Yes or no, whatever. All right, so I suppose, yeah, by the face of it, this lesson today is simple, but it's very, very important. That's why I call it golden rules. They are really golden. Everything, every change, almost everything. When I say everything, it means 99.9999, almost 100, not exactly, but everything, every change is done with auxiliaries, made with auxiliaries, which are either available, you can see, or you bring it, and there are just two cases, simple past and simple present tense. And then just do it once, enough. So I suppose you like today's lesson. We'll talk more, hopefully, later on. Until then, goodbye.